Oh, hi, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the sacrament of Holy Communion. Now, as we begin to talk about Holy Communion, let me ask you a few questions. Does your family say grace before you eat a meal? If you do, why do you say grace? If you don't, why is that, do you think? Why wouldn't you say grace? If you remember the things that I taught you about prayer, you would understand that taking a moment to say thank you before eating is a way of showing God and your family how much you appreciate the things that have been given to you. Know what? It also helps us think about people in the world who do not have good shelter or food or even a safe place to live. Everyone should say grace. Everyone should take a moment to say, thank you, God. You should too. You would also remember some of the things that I taught you about ancient people. They were people who believed that God provided everything for them. And they paid very close attention to nature. They grew crops. They hunted for food. And yes, sadly, they would often fight with other tribes over land, over food, over water, over religion. All that aside, ancient people were very careful about rituals. And you've learned that in this course, haven't you? Rituals were like special ceremonies that had to be done just right. They felt that rituals done just right would please God and show God how thankful they really were. As time went on, these rituals became really a beautiful part of everyday life for most people. So now I'm going to ask you to remember a word: relationship. And if you can't rightly remember, go back to video number 4, where I talked about relationships with our friends, with our family, and relationship with God. These folks had a relationship with God. And it's important for you to understand that the people that did all these rituals weren't just doing it because they were afraid of God. They were doing it because they had a genuine appreciation. They loved God, and they knew in their own hearts that God loved them. And if you're watching this video and this thing seems a little bit crooked to you, it's driving me crazy. So that's why I'm trying to fix it. I think I have to go this way with it a bit. Anyway, if you don't mind, I don't mind. Perfect. Okay. Remember the word relationship. These people were not just afraid of God, they loved God, and they believed that God loved them. So let me ask you to use your imagination and go way back in time to visit an ancient Jewish or Hebrew family. And we're doing that because we know that these were the ancestors of Jesus. Meal times were very special to these families. They always sat together at an appointed time to eat their meals. They all came together. And they would start off with a prayer of thanksgiving, asking God to bless the food to make them strong after they ate it. They said thank you to God for actually having the food that they could eat. And during the meal, they would chat, they would share news, Parents would teach their children, and they would tell stories. And at different parts of the meal, they would actually stop. And then a prayer would be said, another thanksgiving would be said, and once again they would ask God to bless the next part of the meal. There was a pattern in these meals that we know existed, a pattern for every meal. First of all, the family would take the food. Now, we get our food from the grocery store, most of us. They got their food from farming, from hunting, from trading with other people. In other words, payment for something they had done. They would take that food and place it on the table after it was prepared. Number one. Number two, they would offer a thanksgiving to God. They would ask for a blessing to make the food holy so that it would nourish their bodies physically and spiritually as well. Third, they would divide the food. They would break it up. Bread would be broken, the meat would be cut, and the vegetables would be taken and divided up. So they would break it up. And then number four, they would give the food to the family. Each step done with prayer. They would give it to the family. And afterwards, food would be shared with any visitors who might be camping nearby. And it would always be distributed to those in the community who were less fortunate, so that God's generosity was being shared in the world. So here's the pattern. Take, right? Bless, break, and give. Now, as we move on, I want to remind you of the story of the Passover, and we're going to talk about that in the very next video.